What is going on? We're back, the Fastest 40 and Odyssey Sports podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs. It's your boy Dan Portillo, and of course, I'm here with Trey Lawrence, the two-man team that runs the show in front of the camera. Of course, we have Bryce behind the scenes producing the damn thing too. Trey, how we feeling, brother? It's I mean,
Hey
we're
man,
we're
I'm
just a
good.
couple days away from training camp.
Yeah, I'm pretty fired up. So, there's a kind of a quiet period there that always tends to happen in May and June. And here we are a couple weeks away from training camp, and things are going to get fired back up. And SBs were live last night. Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes got best male player in all of sports, and then the best football player in the NFL. So I'm pretty fired up. Season's about to kick off. All the off-season antics, everything's kind of warming up, and along with the weather here in Kansas City, it's hotter than shit, and we're gonna get it fired up, man. I'm excited for the next couple weeks. What you and I got lined up for the show is what I'm
Yep.
excited for. So, um, Dan, why don't you run us into what that's going to look like for the next couple weeks?
Yeah, man, I'm honestly really pumped to finally start talking about some analysis, right? Like there has been a lull May and June, but the players have kind of given us a little bit of content to bridge the gap. Unfortunately, that off the field stuff has occurred. But over the next couple of weeks, what we're really going to be covering going into the regular season and into the preseason really are the position groups, right? What does the roster look like top to bottom? How do we think that the team's going to fare with the talent that we have on the depth chart today? Those are the pieces that I'm excited to tackle and really get back into kind of the X's and O's talk more than the tabloid talk, right? Which I know you kind of alluded to it already. Mahomes took home a couple of SPs, right? That guy's having a hell of a week. Him and his wife Brittany just announced that they're gonna have their third kid too. So pretty awesome seeing what
Yeah,
he's doing there. Patrick Mahomes the second. What medal? I did want to ask this. What medal is this third kid gonna be named after?
yeah, that's a good question. It'll be Katie and I were just talking about that, wondering, is three the stopping point? It hard to fathom another one, as I'm sitting in my situation now with two. So
Well, have Katie give us some insight into what she thinks that next metal material inspiration is going to be for the third kid's name, because
will
there's a
do.
lot of possibilities on where you could go.
Yep, yep.
Before we get into today's episode, the meat and potatoes of it, we're going to be talking quarterbacks, running backs, walking through that depth chart as we kind of going into this segue. I think the quarterbacks is it's going to be a foregone conclusion on who's going to be starting, but at least talking about the depth behind our man Patrick Mahomes, and then really just running through the running back room and looking at a couple of potential ads in free agency as we get into that first week. So going to be a lot of fun there. Quick shout out to our partners at the Atlas Saloon in Excelsior Springs. Man, they've been doing some great things, especially since they launched the brewing of their own beers back in 2018. Keith Hudson, brewmaster there, partner with the McColl family to really push homegrown quality award-winning beers, which has been a lot of fun to see not only that side of it grow within the Atlas Saloon, but the community grow around that establishment during the Chiefs season and all of the traditions that have really been built up there. It's been a lot of fun seeing that place grow within the downtown area and within the Excelsior Springs community. So if you head up north of Kansas City, right off of 69 Highway, you'll find yourself in Excelsior Springs and Tiger Country. Go visit the Atlas Saloon, check them out. A lot of fun, a lot of fun stuff there. So Trey, let's dig into these QBs, man.
Yeah, let's do it. So, quite honestly, right now, just firing it up. I'm going to run through the list. And when I pulled it up here just, 3 minutes ago before looking at it this morning, um, look at pulling up the quarterbacks, man. Completely forgot Carson Wentz jumped on the team. I mean, this guy is at this point, he's like, hey, let's go to Kansas City, sit behind Patrick, maybe put some jewelry on my hand,
Right.
1 or 2 years, and I'll bounce out of the league and call it a day. seems to be a hot spot for those kind of guys sitting behind Patrick Mahomes, But I like that look. And to be honest with you, when I was thinking about this, we were talking about this last week about, diving into position groups, looking at the quarterback position, I was thinking, you always have to think about that scenario. Pat goes down, breaks a leg, dislocated shoulder, whatever the scenario is.
Worst case, yeah.
Yeah, worst case scenario, Patrick Mahomes goes down. Who's coming in? What's the game plan? Obviously Andy Reid plans very well around things like that, but you got to have, somebody to orchestrate everything that they do on that offense and, who's next man up. And I feel comfortable with Carson Wentz, about the same or a little bit less of a level than we've had in the last couple of years. I will say that. But Carson Wentz is not a bad quarterback. It's not some guy we just drafted 2 years ago who has, played 3 snaps in a regular season or anything like that. Carson Wentz has experience in the NFL. He's got experience playing big games. And so I think at that point, what a better backup quarterback to have right now in the Chiefs and Carson Wentz. So, without diving into the whole Patrick Mahomes, what he's done, what he will do, what he'll continue to do, I just looking at the backup position, I feel comfortable with where we're at with Carson Wentz. Looking here, 31 years old. I can't believe that dude's 31 years old, but guess he's been rocking around in the league for a bit. But how you feeling about the quarterback room?
Yeah, I mean Carson Wentz is pushing what? He got drafted in 2016, so I mean he's coming up on year 8 in the league. Kind of crazy that he's been around that long, but
he's on 9. Year 9.
Year 9.
Yep.
So I mean just talking about, everything that he's been able to accomplish kind of in his own right with the Philadelphia Eagles. He won a Super Bowl, right? Like I know Nick Foles was really the quarterback that led the team during that specific game. But let's not forget Carson Wentz guided him through the entirety of that regular season, was an MVP candidate at one point, and ultimately knows what it takes to win and what it takes to be around a Super Bowl culture. Now, say what you want about his career in recent years, right? But he's not going to be the man. He's not expected to come in here and start. Patrick Mahomes is clearly going to be that guy, barring some sort of unfortunate event. 15 will be there. But a name that I didn't realize was on the depth chart, Ian Book out of Notre Dame. I thought he was still with New Orleans. That's definitely a guy who is going to give Oludokun some competition in the quarterback room there. So I think Ian Book has a solid opportunity to be our number 3 guy behind Wentz, behind Mahomes. And ultimately just kind of looking at everything that we have on the depth chart in that position behind Mahomes, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for us to maybe carry one of those guys on the practice squad, have another guy who'll be ready to suit up if needed, or even just to come in and, close out a game, and we'll feel comfortable that he'll be able to do that if we end up going up double digits against somebody or something like that.
Yeah,
so
sure.
a lot to be, positive about in that particular room. And with those guys, I mean, they're usually just as much help for the defense as they are the offense, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because they can say, okay, in this kind of a look, this is something that maybe I would do in that scenario. Here's a couple of tips on what you can look for from these quarterbacks. They'll look at film for the defensive side and say, hey, look, watch, he's doing this because he sees this. So knowing that Carson Wentz is back there, obviously Mahomes is giving those tips as well. That's going to be helpful for everybody on the roster to have that kind of a guy on the team. So I was really excited when we signed him because I really think he's going to bring some value to the team as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's a good point to talk about the defense there, where those guys can, we've heard stories about in training camp and throughout the season where they'll take hey, we're playing Russ Wilson this week. This is how Russ throws the ball. This is his cadence.
Yeah.
This is kind of how he likes to shift the line. This is the audibles he likes, and that they can kind of play to those strengths of the opposing quarterback we're going against that week. And those backup quarterbacks can play that guy, and it's kind of nice having some experience to be able to do that. But Dan, let's jump into the running back room and a little bit more juice to squeeze from this one here in the running back room. Obviously We have the situation with Isaiah Pacheco, who has he's a freaking stud at this point. He's going to be the cold cut number one starter this year. With Jerick McKinnon exiting the team, I think we're going to see a lot more 3-down reps, a lot more consistency out of Pacheco. He won't be sharing as much. I still think there's I don't want to say a lack of trust, but there's still a hesitancy, I would say, within the Kansas City organization to lean on CEH too much to handle the rock. So I think picking him up on a 1-year deal this offseason was more of a contingency plan. If something happens to Pacheco, CEH is going to be there to kind of backfill that role. Not necessarily a 2-tandem running back system like we've seen, quite honestly, for the last 7 years in Kansas City. So I think it's going to be more of a single back set. But on top of that, we got guys like Louis Rees-Zammit. I don't even know if I said my man's name right. Out of he was playing rugby last year. And then we got Carson Steele. We talked about him a couple months ago on the pickup this offseason. And the guy runs like a freaking train, right? So it's going to be interesting to see I'm interested in how Carson Steele is going to plug in. And is he going to be more of a, goal line situation, 3rd and short, 4th and short, or is he going to kind of fill the typical hybrid fullback that we've seen kind of mold into the last 10 years, where the fullback position is kind of altered a little bit to change to the way offense has been playing the game. So that is kind of where I'm looking for this. On top of that, you got these guys that are going to be involved with the special teams as well.
No, absolutely. I think it's going to be, right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs affiliated with the Kansas City Chiefs. There's going to be probably 4 running backs carried over to the roster in some way, shape, or form with different roles.
Yep.
One of those guys likely going to be a special teamer, right? I think Rees-Zammit is a clear-cut front runner for that position, because that's really the ultimate reason why we brought the guy in.
Yep. Sure.
His experience there. What I think is going to be interesting, like Pacheco, like you said, totally going to be the number one. I don't think there's too many doubts about that. We know he's capable of being that 1,000-yard rusher, getting those short yardage situations taken care of for the team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, familiarity with the team, still young, only 25 years old, great gadget guy. Like, he can still catch the football. He's familiar with the offense. We have to teach somebody for that role. He really, I think, has potential to fill that Jerick McKinnon type of role that McKinnon filled over the last 2-3 seasons, right? So I think CEH, keeping him on board on the 1-year contract, it was affordable. He wasn't going to get paid anything crazy.
No. Yeah, right.
So really, it made a ton of sense to bring him back from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Just having that continuity. What I'm interested in talking about really are these other guys. So like Rees-Zammit, not a lock to make the roster necessarily, right? But he's like a top 10 jersey seller in the UK. Like, he's already got a nice little fan following. So I think what that tells me anyway is that he's taking some quality skills from rugby over to the NFL.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how that translates. The other 3 guys, I think these 3 guys are really fighting for the last roster spot here, or 4 guys rather, really. Carson Steele, we didn't carry a fullback last year. That's kind of the role he embodies a little bit more. I think he carries a little bit of an edge. I'll tell you why here in a second. Deneric Prince, he got some carries last year, ended up being, a solid guy to fill in here and there. Imoni Bailey out of TCU, speedster kind of guy. Size isn't quite there for the running back, but that's something that if he can bulk up and still maintain his speed and shiftiness, he'll be a nice weapon for the offense. And then Keontae Ingram spent some time with Arizona before making his way over here to Kansas City. There's a lot of talent here, and I think that's the NFL situation as a whole. There's a lot of talented running backs out there and just only so many roster spots to carry those guys. And it seems like teams are carrying less and less running backs as the years go on. But Carson Steele, to get back to that point, not to get too far down a rabbit hole, the reason I think he has that fourth roster spot locked up the most is because of what he can do as a bruiser, as a fullback, carrying that body weight and throwing it around. The guy's 6 foot 228. That's like Derrick Henry status. Not quite running the same speed that Henry can carry with, right? I'm not saying he's going to be a future Hall of Fame type of running back, but this is a guy that brings a totally different size and skill set to the backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, definitely more of the pass catcher. Isaiah Pacheco, your every
Yeah,
down guy. Reese Sammet, more of like your special teamer. 6'2", 209, not bad for Reese Sammet, by the way. But Carson
yeah, yeah,
Steele adds that last element that I think the Chiefs' backfield needs to be successful and to be dynamic and to be able to have those different kinds of play calls that Andy Reid is known for. So
yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that fourth roster spot? And or is there a chance we carry five and we make Carson Steele a true fullback? Like, what are you thinking on that side of things? Because that those cuts are going to be important.
I don't think we see a true fullback position make the roster. I think we're too heavy at tight end, and I think that's where you take that slack out for a fullback is if you're weak at the tight end position. So I don't think there's a slot for that. I think what matters here is what Dave Toub thinks, and who here or who out of those guys can contribute on special teams as well, whether it's kickoff, punt, kick return. I think that's where obviously you already mentioned it, where Zamet has an edge there, but I think Carson Steele, what he can bring to the offense, gives him an edge from that heavier set running back. But I think he also has opportunity to have an impact on special teams as well. So I think I think the cuts at four, just like you said. I don't think they make that exception, but I think it rounds out with Zamet and Steele on the back end of that four.
So it's Zamet, Steele, Pacheco, CEH is kind of where your head's at too.
Yeah, yep, yep.
Now, and that's the thing too. Like, if those are the four that are carried on the roster week one, there's no saying that Prince, Bailey, and Ingram won't still be on the practice squad and potentially rotate in because
Oh
injuries
yeah,
are a thing one, but you also are going to game plan for who you're playing against.
yep.
And I think
So here,
carrying a guy like Prince or Bailey on the practice squad to rotate in, like Bailey is the one I'm the most excited for as long as he can like get to a point where, the Chiefs are developing him for the NFL. Like he showed some promise at TCU.
yeah, I think also a kicker here is that those two guys in the 3 and 4 slot, Zamet and Steele, are both rookies, and one doesn't have football experience, right? So I think there may be some hesitation on that front to bring in, your last two spots on the roster for running back to a couple guys who are rookies, new to the NFL, and one who is new to football. And so I think there's going to be conversations about that for sure at One Arrowhead
Yeah.
Drive.
No, absolutely. And Amani Bailey being that undrafted free agent rookie, like he still has that football skill too. So Reese
Yeah,
Sammet, I mean, he's really going to have to prove himself,
yeah,
this offseason and in
yeah.
training camp. And,
Although
you
he's
know,
gotten high praise from a lot of people at press conferences, Zamet has so, and specifically from Patrick Mahomes. I think he's commented on him 3 or 4 times at this point, man.
wow. I'll say this, to impress during rookie mini camps or voluntary OTAs, like that's one thing. Training camp's really going to be the true test, right? Like
Yep.
that's where it's going to be put everything you've got on the field. We're going to be full pads here in these situations. Like how well are you taking in the playbook? Are you picking up those football instincts in open field? I think that's the ball carrying is going to be the easiest part for him to pick up, but being able to read the gaps, hit those,
Yep.
when he needs to, block when he needs to, and protect
Yep.
as a running
Yep.
back, like
Yep.
those are going to be the pieces that are a little more difficult, the strategy side of the game itself.
Agreed 100%. Yep.
All in all, the best part about going through our rosters, I think there's not too many holes. And when it comes to our running back group, we really have one of the best. I mean, Pro Football Focus booked us as the best backfield in the division. You look at some of the other teams, we can just keep it in the AFC West, right? The Raiders, they just lost Josh Jacobs to the Packers. The Chargers just lost Austin Eckler to the Washington Commanders. And then over in Denver, you don't really know what you have because Javonte Williams has been injured the
Yep.
majority of his career. And then you look on the other side at McLaughlin, and it's like, is that guy going to be a flash in the pan where he had, some good stretches, or can he really tie it together and become that quality back? So I'd say Denver's the closest to us in that regard. We're not even going to talk quarterback rankings. We know where we sit there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
from the running back standpoint, I think we have one of the best groups in the division, and it's going to help us a ton when it comes to securing that spot in the playoffs and bringing home. I mean, what would it be? Our quick math, ninth? Is
Yeah, I
it
think it's the ninth, man. I think
would
it's
that
the
be the
ninth.
ninth straight division title that we're working towards? So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean that's kind of what what's at stake. So
yeah. Well, that's well said. I think as we continue on throughout the next few weeks to dive into position groups, that'll be fun. That'll be a fun aspect to kind of take a look across the division at least and see where we stack up. And as of now, I think it's safe to say 2-0, Dan.
2-0 so far, and how we're stacking up. There's not going to be a quarterback group in the NFL that surpasses what we have, and from a running
No,
back standpoint,
negative. Yep. Yep.
we're just very even keeled. I think we have the perfect committee of running backs with just what we've discussed, right?
Yes.
Guy who can come in and catch passes, another guy can be there downs, one through three if he has to be, and then of course some other guys to fill in for those other unique situations. So, all in all, Chiefs fans, you got to be excited about what we're carrying over because there's a lot of young talent. There's a lot of young talent in the running back room. I think the oldest guy in that room is Pacheco at 25. So
CEH. He should be a year or two older, shouldn't he?
CEH is actually a month younger than
Oh,
Isaiah Pacheco.
right on. Quick
Yep.
fact for you to end the show right
Yeah.
there.
A little note, a little show note.
Yeah. All right, Chiefs
So,
fans. Next
trigger.
week, Dan, we're going to jump right into another position group and kind of evaluate what the status is for the Chiefs going into training camp here. And then obviously, I think we're going to continue on rolling with the division matchup and kind of see where we're at there. But be sure to tune in next week, Chiefs fans, and listen to the show. Be sure to follow all the socials on X, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff at the fastest 40. And Dan, you got anything else, brother?
Yep, just again, follow those socials and make sure you're liking any of the videos or episodes we're dropping on any of our services, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube.
Yep.
It's going to help a lot with just getting the outreach out there as we gear up for the season. So appreciate everyone hanging with us this off season, and we will see you next week.
All
Peace.
right, let's go, Chiefs.